Hi guys, welcome to Kelly with Cleanly Consumed, and today we get the pleasure of interviewing Dian Ginsberg and Sheila Vuckovic.
Hi.
Hi. And they're in the Houston area. They're actually in Bel Air, so they're conveniently located, and you can also catch them on YouTube, and they have a Facebook website and other media, but we're actually getting together today to talk about a book that they were able to join forces and write together. That's really a roadmap that doesn't just focus on one area, it focuses on several areas to kind of target and give you a roadmap to really elevating and taking your health to a whole new level with ownership and empowerment so that you can feel better. So welcome, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
So let's just go ahead and dive in and tell us about your philosophy, kind of how you got into functional medicine, what your mindset is, and how your thoughts are on approaching health and wellness from different avenues.
Let me start. You go ahead. Well, for me, our paths are somewhat similar. She was actually my personal physician. For many years, delivered my babies before I actually started working here, but mine started because my oldest is on the autism spectrum, and I was in grad school when he was diagnosed. Just going back, I have an original degree in kinesiology, but I realized nutrition fed into, I was a personal trainer, and I needed nutrition to really help my clients. And so I went back to grad school for that. And then while I was in grad school, he was diagnosed at 4. And then I started to get into well, how can I help him besides just throwing all these meds at him, which is what I was offered. And so just through research, I started seeing some DAN doctors, Defeat Autism Now. They don't call it that anymore, but I didn't realize at the time those were functional medicine doctors. We were doing biomedical treatments. And through that, I got really interested in it. I bought an infrared sauna for my house. And that's kind of what led me to her, because I remember in one of our visits, we were talking about how we both had kids that had issues that we were stressed out about.
Yeah, I tell people Krispy Kreme eating, bad microbiome, up all night gut from 26 to 30 or something like that when I was a resident, probably blew up less than optimal. And then I, birthed 2 kids, and both of my kids are on the dyslexia processing, we got every diagnosis in the world. And through looking at the outside the box at their gut and their nutrition and environmental lifestyle. In other words, how much they were watching their videos and how much outside they were getting, because my oldest is 24, my youngest is 20. And probably at that time, all the video games, I grew up with Pong and all the video, right? I mean, I did. And you had to actually get up and turn the TV channel. So it's not like my grandmother, but I mean, that was it. So what we in the allopathic world, because I'm an OBGYN MD, we tend to kind of t-shirt everybody. Here's your t-shirt. You're autistic. You have MS. You have Parkinson's. And so I think both of us together wanted to sort of take that off and take a step back and go, okay, the human body is a perfect machine. What are the things we need to keep it healthy, which is probably where our 6 kind of lane roadmap approach comes from looking at almost anything in life that took you from a reasonable, healthy state of being to illness.
Right, and some people don't even remember where that started going wrong.
Correct. They just have a pile of pills. Right, they have a pile of pills and a bunch of diagnoses.
Right. I can relate to a lot of the things that you're saying for sure. That's why you become so passionate about what you're doing, because your family or your own personal, you're your own personal health advocate and insurance for your family.
Well, for me, my big one didn't have language till 4.5, or 3.5, and my baby didn't have any language, not a word, until he was 5 years old. And the testing said, they tested him and said he was severely mentally retarded and would never talk. And my big one, they told me I had all kinds of processing issues. And my older son, and I tell people he's going to med school this year, and my little one is at Southwestern with a 3.5. So you can change your genetics, and science now is really about physics and epigenetics. In other words, all the real new cutting edge science talks about, well, just because I have this gene or just because I'm in this particular situation doesn't mean that I can't, with my life and my state of thought process, affect my own health and my future.
No, absolutely. Being positive, gut-brain connection. And if I'm not mistaken, one of your sons, they're probably both athletic, but one has really been training a lot lately for competition.
Yes, my little one is, not only does he run cross country and track at Southwestern, but he was just on American Ninja Warrior. So he is the dyslexic ninja, and he wears a shirt that says dyslexia before it was cool. So it really, it's been huge for the dyslexic community too, because you get a diagnosis, and we see that with PCOS also. You get a diagnosis and it's like, oh my God, I'm alone. I have nobody. The parents of the dyslexic kids say, my kid will never have a future. The poor PCOS patient says, I'll never have a baby. I'm never going to be able to lose weight. And what I want people, that not only read our book, but to give them a roadmap, but to look and say, hey, this stuff really works. I saw my own kids really change.
Right. I know that you hear, and I hear testimonies on a daily basis of those success stories of people being told that they did not have a baby, and staying on their protocol, staying committed to their protocol, actually seeing change happen, and those positive testimonies being shared. Okay. So let's see, I wanted to ask, how much does stress impact recovery, short-term versus long-term stress?
So you can't unrelate stress to your gut. Sheila's just pulling a chair over. You can't unrelate stress to your gut. And actually, you know what, why don't I let you answer this, stress in the gut? Because this is more nutritional, right? Digestion and stuff. Sheila's a good person to answer this.
Well, I just think it's this morning. Have you heard about the Interconnected series? Have you watched that, Kelly?
No, I need to.
So it's free right now. Today's day one. It's one of those like summit things. It's actual videos though, not just interviews, like a documentary type thing. Tom O'Brien is in it, and Karazian's in it. Anyway, it's all about the gut microbiome. And they were talking about looking at the stress piece of how it changed your microbiome, especially in moms during pregnancy and things like that. But I see it all the time here where I'll see people that are coming in for chronic health conditions, and we're trying everything. You know, we've looked at their gut, we've looked at their diet, you know, they're making changes, but they're like, I still have horrible bloating and gas, or I still have diarrhea every day, or my joints are still achy. And then they'll come back and see me and say, well, I changed jobs and everything went away and I'm good. I'm like, yeah, well, okay. And I have, you know, a similar situation where I have a friend who thought she was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, has horrible pain. And then all of her labs recently are coming back normal, and she still is barely getting out of bed, but she's got a lot of stress in her life right now with just personal stuff going on. And, you know, she's asking me, why are all my labs normal? The labs they were looking at, and even the ANA factor had gone away, whatever, the rheumatoid factor, and she was very confused. And I'm like, well, I just think right now with everything going on, a lot of it is driven by your stress. She's looking for the diagnosis. Like, I want them to diagnose me with rheumatoid arthritis so that I can know I can go on Humira, and that'll help me. Right. But now without a diagnosis, I don't know what to do. And some of that I just feel like is so lifestyle related. Even with diet, when I see people that are coming in, a lot of times chasing where they've gotten to the point where they're eating nothing, they've restricted everything and they still don't feel better. You know, we need to have a talk about the therapy piece of that, the mindfulness piece of that, and how that might be really driving a lot of their conditions.
Because from the level of digestion, people have to understand that your body has to be relaxed to digest. It goes back to, medicine 101. Grandma used to say, don't jump in the pool after you ate because you'll drown. Well, the reason is because your body takes away from the peripheral, your arms and legs, your external parts, to put energy and blood into your gut when you eat. So if you jump in the water, you cramp. That's why Grandma said, don't do that. So if we spend all this time and you're under stress 24/7, your brain's going, your heart's pumping, you don't digest. When you don't digest, you don't kill the bad bacteria in your food, and you don't break the food down. So when it gets into your small intestine, there's inflammatory bugs that have not been killed, and there's big food particles, and then your body can't break down the fat particles. And I think this is really key, especially in PCOS, because you make energy out of fat and you make it out of glucose. So if you can't break the fat particles down, you're going to have to make it out of glucose, and you don't generate as much energy there. So therefore your body is constantly hungry then. You're constantly driving more calories in. And then if you have your computer job or your sedentary little bit lifestyle, and people seem to think, oh, I ran a lot of errands today. That's still car to store and car to store. So you wind up not burning those calories, and the whole body starts to tip in more of a negative, dysregulated direction. And that's where you start to see disease state.
Right. I think people minimize it for sure when you were talking about stress, and then some people can't pinpoint where the stress is coming from. I had a client that had foot pain to where she was wearing a boot, and then she had cortisone shots. And I said, well, did you have an injury? What happened? And we just couldn't come up with, she doesn't know. And then finally I said, well, what life change did you have recently that added a lot of stress factor, to your life? And she said, well, I did pick up a part-time job in addition to what she's already doing, and she has 2 young kids. And I said, well, what is your exit strategy for that? Because, clearly we pinpointed it to that. And so it is kind of eye-opening. Sometimes something seems so simple that they don't really understand the impact that stress has.
And I think people need to understand that stress isn't always, oh, well, it's something on my mind. In other words, if you're inside too much and your genes don't let vitamin D into your cells easy, maybe you came from the equator, I would say great dinosaur grandma. So therefore, your vitamin D, you need way more, and you need the outside vitamin D. So if your cells aren't getting the vitamin D in that it needs, that's a stressor. If you have a genetic predisposition to your immune system flares easier with foreign foods, and you tend to put more gluten down. You're not necessarily celiac, but that's a stressor. So people have to take a step back and look at their whole lifestyle and their environment inside and out to really bring those stressors down in every way.
Well, mentioning genetics, I think sometimes people think that genetic testing is to find out exactly where their ancestry is from, which is key in diet. Like you mentioned, I think people don't realize that it's not what their grandmother ate. It's from what continent and what region you came from. Right. Kind of using that as kind of like a roadmap to know what foods to at least start with and to see if they feel good or not. But let's talk about genetics and why genetic testing is it's really a good resource and why. And then you're a good person to go to for that, because then you can understand and explain those genetic SNPs.
So I think genetics has been a double-edged sword. I think understanding your genetics is important to understand your strengths and weaknesses. The problem that it's kind of turned into today is that there's a lot of people that want to use genetics to go, oh, I have this particular gene, and that explains every problem in the world. And we see that a lot. Yeah. So it's not, I have MTHFR, right? Everybody talks about methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase. And Sheila and I did a YouTube video on that to explain it. So every 50% of people have a mutation in that gene. And I always tell people, if you're that genetically mutated, you would be dead. So the fact that you're not means something is compensated working together. But if you're getting illness, then whatever is weaker in your genes, you need to support. So whether you do Max Genetics or 23andMe or whatever you decide to do, it may give you an idea that, hey, I do tend to be more inflamed with this, so I have to change my diet this way, or I need to get more outside vitamin D, or if I do have the double mutation in MTHFR, which I think about 15% of people have, they do what methylation does slower. So when you shove a lot at that system, then the system breaks down, and that's where the problem is. So while it's important to know your genetics, it's not, oh, I have MTHFR and go take a whole bunch of methylfolate.
Yeah, and I feel like it's helped me to know just, I had a lot of anxiety in my 20s, really bad anxiety. And when I got a chance to look at my genetic report, I mean, I do have a double MTHFR. I also have a COMT issue. I have a CBS issue. I have crappy genetics.
I'm a robot.
Yeah, she has great genetics. I don't. But it just really kind of helped me understand where all that came from. And just, I use it as, well, I don't methylate as well, so I can't take in the junk that other people can. It explains why someone else may have been able to eat McDonald's their whole life and never really been affected by it. And I feel like if I stray from a good diet, it affects me more. So it just kind of helped me give myself a little bit of grace, whenever I feel some anxiety, depression type stuff. Well, this is I'm more prone to this. I just need to be more careful about self-care. And it just kind of helps me take a step back to know my limitations. That's more of how I use it.
And the same way that my father had hypertension. So yeah, that's in my genes, but I think my own blood pressure came from probably a little bit of lifestyle. I love distance athletics. I raced 2 Ironman. I loved it, but I was doing that while I was taking care of my kids, getting, them into college and med school, and still delivering babies. You're right all night. So I think that said, whoa, it's a really good example here, because I think I tried to keep my life healthy, eating well. So I controlled my hypertensive genes, and that's why I'm a good self-experiment. So now, not delivering babies and understanding what I've allowed to happen, what I'm trying to do is roadmap myself back to health to get off my meds. So it really goes back to the same thing. Just because you have an insulin resistance receptor, so you are predisposed to blood sugar problems, doesn't mean you're automatically genetically going to have PCOS.
Right. It's an empowerment tool to know to make those lifestyle changes. Correct. And then if you do fall off the wagon, whatever it is that you're trying to avoid, and you can take steps like for me, if I have a cheat day, then I would do dry brushing, take a detox bath, change my supplements a little bit, increase my water intake, just do some stress management so I can relieve that pressure off my body. So it's an empowerment tool so that you have that in your toolbox.
Well, and I think, unfortunately, some of what we'll see, and we want people that, what Sheila said was great about giving herself some grace, because we'll have patients come in that will say, okay, look at all these things. Let's look at the roadmap, whatever it is in life, and let's change these things. So we'll have patients, we say, okay, you have inflammatory genetics and blood sugar dysregulation, but their diet was really an issue and they weren't getting outside. That doesn't mean that every time they go out to dinner, and I said to somebody today that you have to hold a knife to the neck of the chef and say, if you put gluten in that sauce, I'm going to kill. So then they get off the bandwagon, right? In other words, people tend to be all here or all there. We don't want that to happen. We want people to recognize what they have to improve. But like Sheila said, so if you get off, or you said, then get back on, and don't make it like you have to be so hardcore to where you said, like, people at points were eating nothing.
Right, but and knowing how to support your body and taking off that stress, and not punishing yourself for it, but you're empowered because you know how to help your body compensate to get better. Okay, and then we can talk about a little bit about nutrition and gut restoration, how those work together, how the foods that you eat and the inflammatory foods for that particular person, and then how your gut microbiome, what does your office do to empower people so that they can know what they can eat, and then how that affects their food. I try and get people to understand that you're feeding your gut.
Right.
Everything that you eat, how it affects your gut.
Yeah. And I think that was another thing that I love about when you look at the natural things in place, like breastfeeding, for example, the biggest sugar in breastfeeding is that sugar that's completely undigestible to the baby, because it's feeding the gut microbiome. And so it's just interesting to me that very first food was 40% of it is just to feed the microbiome. And so if we think about how important the body felt that was, we do need to mimic that as far as us feeding the body fibers and good non-inflammatory foods, because they are basically doing everything for us. But I also think that digestion is such a big piece of that. And that's what we've been trying to really emphasize more, is that if you're eating on the run when you're super stressed and, all that, it's not just the fact that you're driving through McDonald's necessarily. It's also the fact that you're eating in the car and you're not in that state to even digest that food. And so I think that's a really big issue of why we see people that come in with the issues that they have. But we do like to do, some testing here. I like to meet people where they are. And so if you come in and your diet is terrible, I'm not going to automatically put you on an autoimmune paleo diet. We're going to make small changes for you that are sustainable. And even those small changes of getting real food in are going to make a difference. And so it's always kind of just meeting them where they are. There's not one size fits all protocol. And that's where it helps to work with a practitioner, I think, because it really helps to kind of know, how do I really individualize that? Because this diet's not going to work for you, and it might work for this other person. But the testing also helps to determine, do we need to do some kind of remove protocol first, or, do we need to repair and all that kind of stuff. So
what patients or people, I think everybody needs to understand though, is the number one thing, right, that's most important to all of us is microbiome diversity. The more diverse, and this I learned from my total crush, Dr. Krishnan, Dr. Karan Krishnan, who I quote on everything I do because I've learned so much from him. But he's right, the PhD of Microbiome Lab. So he'll teach us that the most important thing you have is a diverse microbiome. And, and if you think about it, the microbiome is not part of you, it's part of your environment. It's there because you take care of it. You feed it, you nourish it, you give it hormones, and in return, it makes your neurotransmitters. It balances your neurotransmitters. But you have to give it something to sit on. It needs those starchy vegetables, but it needs the non-starchy vegetables. It needs variation. And as we age, unfortunately, diversity goes down, period. So we're sort of fighting that. So basics we want people to understand is, while we'll do all your testing, I think the Hazda was that tribe I looked up, they eat like 600 different foods, right? The average American eats 15. So we try to, in our book, and I think what we try to start with, like Sheila says, meet people where they are, give out handouts or get people to understand, say, hey, spend 5 minutes in the vegetable department and take your phone and see where it says, what's a braca flower? And it'll show you how to cook it. And so that's a good place to start to keep the microbiome diverse. And the number one thing to keep it diverse is variation of plants.
I think I like your handout on rotating your greens and increasing diversity. And then Karen talks about how going to different ethnic grocery stores, you need to be mindful of your ancestral background. Maybe you can't handle certain things. Like for me, I can't handle coconut oil for different reasons. But my body likes butter. That's a nice thing. But I think, adding diversity, and it also keeps you engaged and, trying new things. And I learned that from your handout. That's amazing. So I like having that.
So just a little personal story that I think is funny. When I first started working here, for lunch every day, she had a turkey sandwich on white bread with, was it mayonnaise or mustard?
Mustard. I think it was wheat bread. I had a bagel. I had a bagel and peanut butter for breakfast. I had a turkey sandwich with wheat bread with cheese, and then I was drinking like 4 Dr. Peppers a day.
But every night for dinner was like a chicken breast with a salad, right?
That's yes. And it
was changes. So that's why I always tell people, like, I don't expect you to walk out of the office and all of a sudden you're eating 100 different. Like that's our goal, but small changes. So it took several years to get.
But that was totally me.
She's like, microgreens. I'm going to try this.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why I think we see a lot of that. The way everybody's lifestyle has changed. Kids go out more than they used to, so their biorhythms are off, their diet is not as good, they take out a lot, and so then variety is not there. They don't eat nose to tail as much. So we're not going to tell somebody to immediately turn upside down, like Sheila said. We just, but if people have an understanding, I don't feel good, then you have to go back to this is the 6 parts of reality, and you have to add that back to your life.
I think that some people are so busy, they don't even chew their food. So sometimes really just making it that simple of taking the time to your food, your enzymes and every digestion starts in the mouth.
Correct.
Slow down. It's better to, and then eat also, not all day long, to give your a break.
Yes, exactly. Because especially women are really bad at the grazing thing. I think we've just been kind of programmed like, oh, we eat 6 small meals a day. But it just kind of turns into, and then I had a handful of nuts, and then I had a handful of cheese, and then, it's like, I didn't really actually sit down for a meal today. And a lot of times when I tell people, it takes a good 4 hours to really digest a meal, they're like, oh. So, yeah.
Your food's just sitting in there waiting until you're done eating so that it can really start digesting it. And if you're eating all day, you're not ever really giving your body that signal that now it's time to proceed with digesting.
Yeah, exactly.
And remember, when you are calm, that's when you make gut defenses. So the immune system in your gut grows when you're calm. So if you don't ever find that downtime, your immune protection, which is the biggest way you're protecting that inside of you from the outside world, won't be there. So now anything that gets in on the salad leaf or the piece of sushi can start to get in and cause trouble. And that's where we start to see some downward spirals in health.
Right. And being, you know, when you're targeting gut health and you're having those bad guys come in, then you already have a defense ready to go. So talking a little bit about some environmental toxins and just day-to-day toxins, and then I want to talk about, you know, your book and then how they can get a copy of the book. But how do environmental and just daily toxins, how much do they play a role in, and toxins can even be electronic toxins.
Do you want to do this? Or you want me to?
Well, I mean, I guess I can start. I feel like for my part, I see a lot of people that are not sleeping well. And when I ask them questions about sleep, they'll say, well, my phone told me that I slept 4 hours last night. And I'm like, well, how does your phone know? Oh, it's pointing at my head while I'm sleeping to keep track of my sleep. I'm like, oh no, please get that out of your bedroom. And so I do see a big lane when people are like, oh, I slept so good last night. My phone was in the other room. I didn't realize how much of an impact that has. And we talk about that a lot in the book. She can explain it way more than I can about the electron interference with these dirty electricity and stuff. But that's the biggest thing that I'm always wearing the Fitbits and sleeping with those at night, and then pointing the phone at your head to keep track of your sleep or just to have it by you. I just think both of those are two easy things you can do to really enhance, take the stress off of your body.
Yeah, because the whole, what from a basic level, what people have to understand is that we are energy combined into microscopic DNA, right? So big energy gets combined down into DNA, and DNA is just utilizing that energy to make proteins. And so it would be like you trying to make dinner with the zombies at the door. So the DNA is trying to do its job, but it's got interference by all these other rays. So there's different levels of rays that hit us. So the ionizing radiation, and we talk about this in a book like Chernobyl, and where people really die from that, those are levels that you're going to see somebody die. The lower levels of this radiation, which is now the 5G, which is the pulsation of the waves that come through us, they're going to affect our DNA. And while we can't get away from it in town, things that are right on top of you will affect your DNA from a buzzing level. And so visualize, again, trying to write something on paper while somebody's shaking the paper enough. It may not be a big traumatic thing, but your handwriting is not going to be so clean. Day in, day out, you will fold less efficient proteins. So therefore, you won't grow your hair as well. You won't repair your brain as well. You won't repair your muscle as well. So we give credit to a lot of that. There's a guy named Nicholas Penalt. We credit him in the book. He wrote the non-tinfoil EMF a book. And it's a real good read, and it's not an expensive book. And his big thing is, you don't have to spend $8 million on a Defender shield. Get your laptop off your lap. Like Sheila said, turn your Wi-Fi off at night. So there's a handful of things we talk about that will help that will help your DNA. Then you will make better cell membranes. And where the toxins from the Roundup that you don't know that they poured in your kid's schoolyard, or whatever was sprinkled on the food that you had to eat at the Rockets game, your body will put those toxins on cell membranes to get it out of your bloodstream so it doesn't go into your blood-brain barrier and kill you. So you want to make sure you minimize as much as possible so you don't put too much into your cell membranes. You want to keep your cell membranes healthy, and then the sauna and the apple cider vinegar and sometimes a more formal detox. We use a lot of Designs for Health products for that. Sometimes what happens is you just have to take that fat soluble stuff that's sticking on your membranes and help it pour out of your system. So that's all part of the balance of what you let in your system and how you offload it.
Right, and that would be another video, and I'm sure that you do these on your page, is Detoxing, how to detox the right way.
Yeah, we did that about 6-8 months ago. Yeah.
Right, and if you have a methylation issue and you're detoxing, then where are those toxins going? They're not all going out. You're awakening them, and now you have a larger problem, and that wasn't your initial goal. So your book, the full title is the PCOS Environmental Roadmap. And then what is the rest of the title?
Oh, what is it?
It was the ways to use your internal and external environment to reverse PCOS. Yes. And I said,
I love the title and I love the cover. And it's basically, when I saw it, it told me that it's empowering you and giving you directions that you need, because if people just say, don't stress, be healthy, get outside more, we're like, well, if it was that easy, everybody would feel good. So knowing that your book offers specific ways to help empower so that you can truly make a change is what I get out of the title. So how can people buy the book?
So it's available on Amazon. It's Kindle and paperback versions. We also still have a PCOS, it's called PCOSRoadmap.com. And it has the book on it with some bonuses as well. So when you buy it on Amazon, you don't get the bonuses, but if you buy it from the PCOS Roadmap website, we have an extra video we did on the book on there. And then I created some bonus material on there, like I think there's a recipe for making your own skincare with some essential oils and stuff like that on there, because we do talk about, like, you know, being more susceptible to toxins from skincare when you've got hormone issues like PCOS. Right. But the book does, like, the first part of the book is more of the science behind PCOS, why it developed, and what, you know, we go into a lot of explanation, research by this one here.
But we tried to keep it, we didn't want to write a 500-page book that would put people to sleep. We sort of wanted it for practitioners, for patients. So sometimes you go into OB-GYN and they go, okay, you have cysts, you have weight issues, you have insulin resistance, you have PCOS, here's your birth control pills, have a nice day. So your OB-GYN doesn't have time to explain anything. And you may not, as a patient, you may not have been able to find a good health coach like you guys. So the poor patient is left kind of not knowing what to do. So we did about 120 pages just on some basic understanding.
I didn't mean that as a criticism. It was a compliment.
No, I just mean that's how what our thought process was.
Yeah.
Right.
We wanted basic understanding and research so people would understand that. And then we went into the roadmap and then the reset. So,
yeah, and the only reason I brought that up is because we did two sections. So the first part of it is more of the explanation, and then it goes into the roadmap with specific steps of what to do. So sometimes people are like, I don't care why, just tell me what to do. So it is separated into those sections. And at the very end, there's a 28-day reset. So we use that as, like, here's just something you can do with actual steps, like do this, don't do this. And it's more lifestyle habits. Like, you know, one of the things is to get sun on your eyeballs every morning for 10 minutes when you wake up to reset that circadian rhythm. So it's basically giving you a roadmap specifically to follow for 28 days to kind of reset some of that inflammation, hormone imbalance, and things like that.
Well, getting sun, I mean, that sounds so simple, but I think people have a sunophobia. I'm sure there's a diagnosis for being afraid of the sun, but I think that you have to walk out and slather with sunscreen. That's a whole nother topic. But not being afraid of the sun would be.
Or even just the morning, your eyes are triggered, right? Animals know the morning, and they get up and they see the sun and they hear the sounds around them and they open their eyes and the sun gets into your eyes and it triggers its day. It triggers your energy expenditure. If you get up and you get in your car and you go to work and sit at your computer, nobody's ever told your body it's really daytime. And so that all relates back to metabolism and blood sugar problems. It's just integrating the whole system. And we wanted, again, practitioners to be able to say to patients, go get this book, you know, OB-GYNs, go get this, because they just don't have time to go through what they need to do. And then the patient, after the book, can then take the next step and say, hey, I want to do more testing. And we explained a lot of that in the book also.
No, it's a great resource, and that's what people need. Is they need a resource that's easy to get, and Amazon is easy, and then your website. So I'm going to list those below. And then I can also direct them to your site. And if you know, they wanted to make an appointment, then I'll also have a link to that as well. So
great, thank you.
Just to point out briefly, because I think you know this, Kelly, but I'm not sure. You know, we are kind of rebranding a little bit. So Dr. Ginsberg is no longer doing OB-GYN, which was a big lifestyle change for her to be a surgeon and then not be a surgeon. I know it's been a little bit of grief there, but it's a good change.
Absolutely.
We are no longer going to be women's specialty healthcare. So those guys are moving to Women's Hospital as of June 1st. And we're staying in our same location in Bel Air, but we are called the Institute of Functional Medicine.
I love it.
Yeah. Just kind of a fun, anyway, but we'll
because it is fun.
It's empowering everybody.
It is.
The more we tell people, the more that they can learn, then when they're having lunch with their friends, they can teach them.
Right. I mean, you've brought so many lives into this world, and now you have a bigger platform to be able to change the lives and make people feel better. So I'm really excited for you guys both.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you ladies both again soon.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you. It's
Great.
great to spend time with
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.